I think the real measure of success is what happens to our youth, the next generation. How have we been able to impact positively their abilities to have work, to have confidence in their own culture and the authenticity, to be themselves. And these are quite, philosophical sort of aspirations, but at the end of the day, that is the true measure. It's not how we have done right now. It's when we're gone, how much better is the next generation? And so for me, while we're working through these big topics, data sovereignty and AI, and trying to look as much as possible through the lens of those that are coming.
Earlier this year, HSO sponsored a number of awards at the Aotearoa AI Summit. A winner of many of these awards was Kiwa Digital. We're joined today by Steven Renata, the Managing Director of Kiwa Digital, who's been fronting up many of their initiatives to integrate AI into their existing solutions of over 20 years and unlock new opportunities to apply AI across their existing customers. He runs us through their decision-making process, how they identify opportunities for AI solutions, how they integrate them into existing workflows without disrupting the value that humans are already adding to those systems. And then he takes us through his vision for the future and how AI is enabling cultural groups to better understand their own data, make that data accessible to new generations while maintaining their data ownership and stewardship. This is a really fascinating conversation for anyone going through a similar transformation in their own organization or looking at solutions out there on the market today and understanding how they may evolve with AI in the coming years. I really hope you enjoy.
Hey, Steven.
Kia ora.
Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I first of all just wanted to congratulate you on winning 3 awards, pretty much cleaned the house at the Aotearoa AI Summit. How are you feeling about that?
Incredibly proud and humbled by the whole thing. And some people have called us the unsung heroes, but to be fair, that's sort of like how we like to operate at Kiwa, just quietly getting on with them. But yeah, absolutely humbled by the recognition, and all kudos to the team.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, to that point, unsung heroes probably is pretty accurate of a descriptor. You guys have been around for almost 20 years with VoiceQ. And do you want to just tell maybe the audience who aren't familiar with Kiwa Digital, what you've been doing, how long you've been around, where you've kind of had influence on the media landscape? I think some shockingly big names there that you guys have had some impact on.
Yeah, you're right. We're actually come out to our 23rd year this year. So I've been around the block a few times. Our founding technology was VoiceQ, which is localization software that's used particularly for dubbing, which has become a popularized way of localizing television, film, and gaming. And so here we spend a lot of our time ensuring that we've got technology that's used by studios all around the world to go through that process. And for our listeners, a quick sort of 60,000 tutorial on dubbing. What is it? So typically what you do is you're taking a television film or TV series from one language to another. Right. And the first thing that takes place is what we would commonly call translation, which there are many ways to do that, everything from human right through to AI and hybrid approaches. With dubbing, there's one more step.
Uh-huh.
So what we do is we take the translated script, and then the person who is adapting that translated script is looking at the video footage, checking for the mouth labels, how the mouth opens and closes, and making sure that the translated line fits what's on the video. In some cases, that is perfect, but in other cases, that the lip movement will seem off, or what we call lip sync. And so they will adjust a word or a phrase within the sentence to make sure that it fits perfectly and fits with the timing of whatever that line might be.
Yep.
And so with our technology, VoiceQ, most of our technology focuses on that last step, the adaptation of the translated script.
Right. So managing, I guess, that viewer experience, that it's not jarring and out of sync and all awkward looking, with that need to have authenticity and kind of consistency with the original script, that you're not, changing the value of the artistic expression of whoever wrote the script and the actor that delivered that performance. Is that roughly it?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You've got to honour the original content and whatever language that might have been. But then for the end users, the viewers, which there are millions of them now, is making sure that visually it's attractive enough to make them want to watch it all the way through. And if it's a television series, it might be many, many episodes. And what's interesting is when you sort of dive into the research, people's tolerance for the lip sync is incredibly low. So some of our listeners might remember the old Bruce Lee movies back in the day.
Yeah.
When you looked at the mouth and it was just all out of sync with the actual audio. What we've managed to be able to do with the technology, with great creative talent, is reduce that lip sync down so that when you see that piece of media or content in the second language, you'd almost swear it was actually filmed in that language. That's what you're trying to achieve. Right.
I think there's some famous parody movies like Kung Pao that almost play off that joke the entire way through, right? Of the terrible lip sync the whole way through. That's good. So that makes sense to me as a process. And I think when you visualize that as a bit of a flow chart, all these different steps you're taking, you could probably see a couple of places that people would try to throw AI in there. They might try to, retarget the lips and do some like AI video and change that so that you don't have to adapt as much. Or, you mentioned automating the translation step. I can imagine 100 ways to throw it at it, but throwing it at the solution is not always the right approach. How do you manage that, I guess, honoring the original creator and keeping them on the journey and keeping their expression authentic, but also enabling, the people who have to just do the work, who have to translate the lines, who have to get all of this work pushed through if they've got a whole TV series to adapt, balancing that authenticity versus efficiency?
Yeah, I guess a workflow is probably a good way to think about it. So, at the beginning, there's a script, and then the script becomes the television film or the movie or the game. It has the original voices on it, and then you start to move into the dubbing space that we've talked about. All the way along that workflow, there are opportunities where AI could help make the process slightly more efficient. And in some cases with this, there are a lot of repetitive tasks that actually would make a really good sense. What we had to try and marry up when we came to producing our version of the AI was to go, at what point does the AI start to infringe on the creative aspect of the talent? And probably the easiest way for the listeners to understand is, so if I'm looking at a translated script, then I'm looking at the video and saying, does that line translated match the lips? I now need to use my translator skills, also understanding the context and the nuance of the scene and the actors, so that when I make the adjustment to the translated script, it truly fits, but still honors the previous content.
Yep.
That piece there, I think AI has still got some work to do, because context and nuance, particularly across languages, and when we get out of the big languages and get into smaller languages, you really can make some big mistakes. So what we did was we looked closely at the adaptation of the script. And what you're really getting down to is algorithms saying, okay, line 1 is 10 seconds long. It's, the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. I'm going to translate into language B. Is there a place in here that we can use things like AI to automate a task that's going to make it easy for the creative talent to go on and say, actually, at that point is where we need to put in markers, which will tell the voice talent of when to enunciate their voice or to reduce the volume, or it's a gasp or whatever it might be. And so now we're getting to really, really fine details of voice actor work. But having the cues set up beautifully, they were able to deliver that line in the way that the original line was, but of course in the second language. So it's a bit like for those that read music. If you've read music, there's a lot of detail on old school music, and dubbing markers and symbols are actually quite similar.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot of layers to that then. It's the language itself, it's the timing of that language, the pace, the enunciation, and then the non-verbal cues and the gasps, like you said, and where do you like punch up or punch down in terms of the tone and everything like that. And you can represent all of that in symbols in addition to the script itself.
Yeah, I mean, to give you a simple visual, this is karaoke.
Right.
Voice actors.
Yeah, I get you. Okay.
So what
That's making a lot of sense now.
You've got the second language line running across, which is your line as the voice actor. And there'll be little markers and symbols on that particular line of text, which is going to be your script.
Yeah.
Giving you indications of how to act, how to voice act, which is as close to as identical as the original actor.
Yeah. There's language over time with that extra dimension as well of enunciation and intonation. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So where did AI come into that exact workflow? You mentioned that it was to help put in those markers, and that was quite a repetitive thing. That was not so much on the translation or adaptation of the language itself. Is that kind of where it fit in the end to your?
Yeah, I mean, we provided sort of a full workflow version of it. So typically, you'll often receive scripts with no timing, which is a real problem. And so what you're able to do is to take the original audio of the media that you received, and you can do on-device transcription. So it's going to take that audio, transcribe it into text, and at the same time keep the exact timing of that audio to match the media. So that's sort of first step. Then you can get into your translations. Again, a variety of ways that you do that, whether that's human-assisted, AI-assisted, or hybrid of both. And then the next part, which I think is really kind of where we push the boundaries, was using 3 types of detection. One is scene detection, when a scene starts and finishes.
Okay.
And that's using visual AI technology.
Yep.
The second one is around facial detection. So now we're looking at if you're looking at the screen, when the person is slightly off screen, turned to the side, or actually off screen but speaking, we can figure out when that is. Why is that important? When they are on screen or where you can see their mouth, the adaptation of the translated script needs to be perfect.
That's right. Yes, you've got looseness on that.
So you can hear my voice, it doesn't matter so much. Again, little nuances, but this is. And then the last thing was around the open and closed mouth technology.
Yep.
And so we're able to look at the media, and they basically put a little box around the mouth of each actor, and we now know when the mouths are open and closed. That's important because then we can figure out the la, ha, ta in terms of the adaptation of the translated script.
Yeah.
All of those scene detection, mouth detections, and facial detections can take hours doing that manually. So if I've got some AI type tools there that can make that process go quickly, it's just identifying the spots. So then I get into my own creative writing, if you like.
Yeah.
But all that timing is perfect. It's been done quickly.
Yeah.
So that's the heavy lifting that can be just incredibly long, slow, and when you're dealing with big features and stuff, you're on the clock.
Yeah. And you've
it's done efficiently and really accurately.
Yeah, and you really isolated those non-creative aspects, right? Where an artist does not bring to bear any kind of cultural significance or knowledge. And I guess that comes to a bit of an elephant in the room, right? Which is you're in this somewhat difficult middle ground that I imagine you're navigating every day of technology feels like it's coming for a lot of artists' jobs, right? A lot of people are worried about AI art taking over illustration positions and AI generated video killing the film industry, in quotes. You see that headline in the news probably every other day. There's all of these, AI generated voice things like, 11 Labs and stuff. They'll make up 101 voices for you. And I'd imagine people would get this initial impression, this voice dubbing company's looking at using AI. They'd have this immediate thought of like, are they going to take voice actor jobs away? And obviously you're not. How do you navigate that, and how do you set VoiceQ up in a way where it's actually keeping those creative people involved and bringing them on that journey and enabling them without replacing them in a way that kind of competes with those technologies that are trying to push them out?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a quandary for us, and it'd be fair to say that VoiceQ, we were slow to the AI party. Probably started several years ago, and part of that was because a lot of our technology was aimed for the creative talent. And when you're working with creative talent, even getting them to get on an Excel spreadsheet or anything that's sort of computer related can be quite a challenge. They like paper and just like being humans doing human stuff. So as we sort of looked at how could we and should we bring AI to this workflow, we tried to find the spots that the creative talent themselves say, that's a really repetitive thing. If something could do that for me, I can get on with being creative. And so there was a lot of back and forward with voice actors, with adapters and translators and directors going, where do you think this could fit? And so that's why we came up with the particular solution. At the end of the day, whether it's AI or automation technology, what we're always trying to do is give the creative talent tools so they can be the best version of themselves.
Yeah.
So, if you're looking at a movie with The Rock's in, and you happen to be the voice actor for The Rock, we want to make sure that karaoke that comes across the screen allows you to be The Rock and deliver it with the same enunciation and passion and believability, authenticity as the original one did. To do that, though, someone had to adapt the translated script properly.
Yep.
So we give them the tools to allow them to do that. So if we add the technology that supports the script adaptation, the technology that supports the visual cues for the voice actors, a little bit of automation for the directors who are sort of directing the talent and so forth, you get incredible performances.
Yeah. It seems like a real force multiplier.
Getting rid of people's jobs.
Yes, that's important. Yeah, improve the jobs. That's actually really exciting, and I think it touches on something there. I think when we evaluate AI use cases, we have this pretty simple formula. It's probably too simple, where we're kind of looking at what's the cost of something and how often are you doing it, and you multiply those out, and that's kind of like the total cost of that function. And let's say we can automate 80% of it, well, we can save 80% of that cost then potentially, right? And that's not actually framed around taking people's roles, but it's much more around if you have 500 people doing this menial thing that takes them half an hour a day and you can give 500 people half an hour back, that's actually like 10 FTE, like it's pretty significant. And I guess you're adding to that one extra attribute to that equation, which is great. It's good to save time, but if that time is saved, if that's taking away a contribution that a human would have, a uniquely human contribution, it's not menial labor. It's an artistic expression that you don't want to automate there. How does that kind of value that you give to culture, that weight that you put on culture and cultural expression, artistic expression, translate into that other piece of work that you've got going on? I've seen mention of on your site, CultureQ. Could you explain a little bit about that and what that's doing?
Yeah, so we've had incredible fun being in the dubbing industry for over 20 years and learned a lot about language and localization of language and how technology can play a role to create jobs. And one thing I would just touch on before we move into CultureQ is that another goal of ours has been to give creative talent better tools to enable them to come into the industry faster. So this is about creating the future workforce and also giving them greater capacity. So if traditionally the piece of work that I would have done would have taken an hour, I could say, if we could help you do that in half an hour, you might get more work with the various studios and so forth that are under. So there's a capability capacity piece that comes with the tools that increases job opportunities and retention of work. And, if you really get clever, possibly you can start increasing your hourly rate because you're a high quality type creative person. So there's a few different factors that come off the introduction of the tools into the craft of the creators for that.
I think that's just a really good point, is that there's so much underserved work that's just kind of too expensive to be done. And lowering the cost of work or lowering the cost of the outcome is not always a bad thing. That's not always displacing labor. Sometimes it's creating opportunity that you can do so much more with that hour that becomes worth paying, and that opens up opportunity. So that's a really good point. Thank you.
And the technology can stretch also into cloud configurations whereby a lot of your translator adapter folks are actually working remotely. COVID actually kicked it off, but suddenly we realized actually if you give a great translator adapter and a director and voice talent for that, the right tools, they can work remotely from wherever they might be in the world. They could be on a project that's several people here within Aotearoa, or perhaps working with someone in Australia, someone in the USA. So the project collaboration using the technology also starts to open up some whole new opportunities of, wow, okay, we could do work that we never thought we could do before. We can reduce the travel costs. We don't have to fly Steven Renata to Australia to do that piece of voice work. He can do it from Auckland. High quality, working with the dubbing director from LA.
So you get the right voice then. You're not cutting corners by getting the local person and getting the best voice globally.
I mean, loosely speaking, you could say you're kind of Uberizing creative talent, which is not necessarily a bad thing if they've got the right tools. But fantastic time with VoiceQ, which continues to be a big part of our organisation. But we spotted another opportunity because we've been working with various Indigenous groups around the world, and definitely here in Aotearoa with Hapu Iwi, Pasifika and so forth, across the ditch with our beautiful Aboriginal Torres Strait Island whānau, and then up into North America with the Canadian First Nations and also Native American tribes. And over the years doing different projects with them, one of the things came up was the management and the storage of member data and treasures and taonga stories of all different types. And so we started getting asked, we love working with you guys at Kiwa with stuff you do with the language. Have you got a platform of sorts that could help us with these issues, which probably started with data sovereignty. It's probably right at the kernel of this sort of corridor, this conversation. And so we thought, oh, okay, because we've been in the production sort of side of things, the fun part. This seemed like a very serious conversation to have. So we embarked on a process that was about 18 months long, thinking, what can we do from a technology perspective to build something that could give data sovereignty to Indigenous groups? And we feel very confident that we've achieved a lot of that. We've done a variety of pilots in different countries and so forth to validate that this is working. But I think with anything with technology, you're always learning. So you're always iterating to the next step. And it's been fascinating to work with elders, in different countries to get their feeling about technology, which often they're very scared of and concerned with, not trusting of. And so listening to their concerns, but also their aspirations, and be able to think, okay, this is what we heard. We create it this way, bring them on the journey, get them to test it, check it. They'll definitely want to have their rangatahi, their grandchildren do the real test of digital natives. And sort of that community-based approach to the design of technology. It's been probably a lot longer in terms of time and process, but incredibly rewarding.
That's really awesome. The point you made there around the conversations you get to have with those elders, I imagine, are fascinating, because you'd be hearing things that have never been written down, and get an opportunity to capture that and preserve that and make that available to their descendants. What are some of the most fascinating takeaways or conversations or experiences you've had on that journey?
Yeah, first would be where is all of this data and taonga actually sitting right now? And not surprisingly, it's under Uncle Steve's bed. It's on someone's USB stick. It's sitting on a hard drive of a computer. It's in a, whatever drive it might be, in some portal somewhere. And then in many cases, good old school hard copy paper. Which is possibly a fire risk. There's 3 generations sitting in that box of files there. Right. So that was the first conversation, is where is everything sitting right now? And in some cases, it's sitting in people's heads. It's oral history, and what we know is there are about 7,200 languages worldwide. And every 40 days rather, we're losing one of those languages. So the race is on. So it's a race against time to make sure that we can support various Indigenous groups and their languages before the elders that have it are gone. So it's a real reality that we're facing. And so one was, where is the knowledge sitting? And if it's oral, are we able to get the elders recorded? And then do a transcription of that into text so it becomes more accessible? Answer is, that's where the technology can really help and accelerate that. Maybe what might sound for some of the listeners a bit of a boring part, but really critical, is that if you're able to actually have these conversations, you've got approved consent and collaboration to record the elders' voices or get these various file assets from wherever it might be and digitize them, is the metadata side of it. So when you're ingesting or importing those files up into platform of choice, how is the metadata created? The metadata is, in simplistic terms, the title of the file, some keywords or tags, and then perhaps a short description of that, and it may also include the author. That information is critical for later on when you want to start searching through the knowledge base which contains those files. If you've got bad metadata, it's going to be a long day. So we've been able to automate that metadata process to a large degree using AI.
You can pull the transcript and summarize it, and absolutely.
So that process would take hours and weeks and months if it was all human labor. So identification of where the assets might be, approval and consent, collaboration to put it into an appropriate digital format. And remember, we're dealing with audio files, video files, PDF files, and so on and so on. Making sure that when that's brought into the platform, that the metadata is on it and it's correct and accurate. And then you get into the fun part. So we've got all this data and taonga and treasures. What are we going to do with it?
That was my next question. So go ahead.
And so there's lots of things you can do with it, but sometimes data is just data. And it's I think that's where we really spotted the opportunity to have what we call private or kaitiaki AI, that does not scrape the internet when it does its work. With CultureQ's kaitiaki Guardian AI, it only works on the digital files within the knowledge base,
Right.
and only the files that it's been given access to.
Yep.
So if there was a particularly sensitive or confidential data file that you did not want the AI to go near or touch,
Yep.
you can cordon that off appropriately. So that gave, again, a lot of the elders and those who are concerned about data sovereignty a lot of comfort, because AI sometimes and data sovereignty feel like opposing forces.
Yep.
And we wanted to show, actually, this could be a guardian, a kaitiaki, a steward for your incredible treasures. So then, of course, you get into setting up the AI. And again, one of the things we're proud of is that you can set up what the technical term is the guardrails. And these are the rules that are set up for the AI. So when it's asked to do a task, it does it in a certain way. And we like to use the term, well, if you were talking to one of your elders, how would you like that elder to behave in its response?
Yeah.
And so we can go into the back end and we can start to put in the protocols, or in Māori we would say the tikanga, as part of the guardrails. So we're really starting to create contextual mannerisms with this Guardian AI, so that when it's used on the data and so forth, it's going to do stuff that seems really appropriate and safe and relevant and respectful.
Yeah.
And what are some of those use cases? Please create a story for 8 to 12-year-olds that refers to our local maunga, one of our tupuna, our ancestors. Maximum 30 pages and 30 words per page. Go.
Yep.
Off it'll go. With a lot of our iwi hapu partners, they've got documentation, which may in some cases be Y-claim material. Yeah, incredibly factually well-researched.
Sure.
The story that's going to be created for the 8 to 12-year-olds from that knowledge base is going to be 10 out of 10.
Right.
And we know that because the iwi and the hapu and the elders were the ones that put the information in there. It's not coming off the web where it could have some hallucinations.
Which actually, to that point, I've got a experience that I had. I was in a creative writing competition as a judge, and one of the requirements was you submit the prompt, but we're going to judge the resulting creative work that comes out of that prompt. So it was a kind of a prompting competition to write short stories. And one of the people submitted, tell me a story about a Māori boy aged 8 to 12 who, through learning about Māori myths and legends, is inspired to clean up his local community and contribute to his ecology and stuff. And we're like, okay, cool. So I see the sentiment there. It's a nice enough prompt. And the output was, this boy, and I think it called him Tane, which is like literally just boy in Māori. It's like not really a name you'd expect to see. Finds this dusty book of Māori myths and legends in his grandfather's attic. And we were immediately like, it's an oral tradition. There's no dusty book of myths and legends that doesn't exist. It's an oral tradition. You'd be hearing it from his grandfather or, some elder. And it just kept going like this, where it was kind of imposing these very Western standardized stories of how you find culture and how you experience culture and how you bring that into your community. And it was just wrapping kind of gimmicked Māori words around that. It wasn't actually grounded in that culture. So you're saying that that's not the experience you get with CultureQ. You're seeing, because of that grounding, because you're able to wrap it in that information, that the outputs are much more consistent with that tradition, and then not driven by that Western kind of behavior.
Yeah, I think that the focus around the guardrails or the training of the AI is critical.
Yeah.
In a practical way, we would sit down with a client and say, what are the sort of top 20 questions that you might ask the AI? And so we'll take those questions, run it through the system, check the validity and the correctness or incorrectness of the answers, and then start to tweak and modify the back end.
Yeah.
Another thing that where CultureQ can really draw on the richness of its training is that when it goes off and perhaps creates the story for 8 to 12-year-olds, it's not only looking at text, PDF documentation, it can also read audio and transcription. So if we're talking about oral histories, to be able to go to that oral history piece that's there, and it's smart enough to listen to the oral, but also the transcription. Now, when it's pulling into the story, that source is really not the dusty book.
That's right.
This was actually what was said by said person and so forth.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So it's able to tap into a richer level of data files with the right metadata.
Yeah.
So I want to keep that authenticity. And it's not about the AI writing the story for the children either. You could change that up and say, please help me structure a story. Just, give me, 5 chapter headings and then we assign the rangatahi the task of actually creating the stories. But we know sometimes with youth, just kind of getting that structure going can be a bit onerous. Whereas once they're going, they're writing, they're drawing, they're doing the audio. And that's the other part with CultureQ is we've got automated publishing in there. So if we're sitting down with groups that are creating stories, whether they be AI assisted or not, we're able to bring in the assets, the text, the audio that matches the text, which might be bilingual, imagery, which could be drawn by the group themselves, or they've managed to get those from somewhere else with the appropriate IP, of course. And in video in some cases, which they may have filmed themselves, or be able to get the correct sources, pull that together with the app builder we've got and create a very short ebook in a matter of minutes. So at the end of a workshop, you've had the youth or whoever it might be for a day or 2 days to be able to actually create that final product within a few minutes through CultureQ, and they're watching it being done and then actually showcase that immediately.
That's cool.
Now you've got the kind of full circle of not only being a contributor to the story, but you've been working on the tool, and you might say, actually, I want to move into more of a director producer role now because I see how this works.
Right.
Or I just want to focus on audio. So I'm going to go back to the kind of the VoiceQ world and get my audio piece right. Or one goes, actually, I'm a writer. I've figured out that writing and bilingual writing is my thing. Or what we often see particularly with the young rangatahi, I just love drawing. So with having the tool, there's a common platform everyone can use and they can see the final product. They can also start to figure out what is my passion and how might that become a job in the future. So it's kind of like that, planting those early seeds of career pathways, which for youth is such a boring thing to say. Just say, what are you passionate about? Let's do it. And we'll do it on using some tech. And by the end of the process, we go, hey, do you realize that that's a copywriting job you're just doing there? Did you realize that's an illustrator job? Do you realize that's a voice actor thing? And so you're kind of selling the future through the process, but in a way that is allowing them to be them in their environments. And at the end, the magic occurs, which of course we know is part of the process.
And I think that's really exciting. You're putting them in the driver's seat. First of all, they're in control of that. And the only things that are under guardrails are those culturally sensitive elements, so they can explore and they can play, but they can't do so in a way that misrepresents or like lowers the quality of representation within those groups, or spreads misinformation or anything like that. I guess you could even use it as like a research tool, right? If you were writing an essay or you were writing a piece and you were like, I don't know, I'm certain about all this stuff, but I want to fact check. You could roll through it that way. I'm really enthused to hear your methodology a little bit, because it's kind of one-to-one with what we do with these enterprises that we work with primarily, which is we go through and we try to catalog the data, we try to get a really good structure around it, we try to make it indexed and accessible, and then when we're making a surface to that, an interface, we talk about how are you going to interact with this, give us 20 examples, how do we build some evaluations around that behavior, how do we guardrail this, how do we make sure it behaves the way that you want it to, and it's that very similar thing, but you're bringing that really, honestly, world-class design to these groups that wouldn't have access to that technology otherwise. And making that a more streamlined kind of adoption framework, I think is really beautiful. When you're working with those groups, you'd be, I imagine, kind of walking a bit of a tightrope in some ways, which is, you mentioned data sovereignty a few times, and I know in iwi it's Tamana Raranga, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and I imagine there's equivalents internationally with other cultural groups. How do you kind of navigate that tightrope around, AI's traditionally in big data centers, it's like, Google hoovering up our data, or Microsoft, Amazon, whoever it is. We get this concern a lot, even from enterprises, and they've got existing, plans for how they do cloud adoption and stuff. How do you get these groups? You mentioned the elders are quite apprehensive. They're hesitant to put stuff in there, and you've got to be that bridge between the big global behemoth, cloud companies and the services that they offer and the value that they offer, which is massive, and these groups that don't necessarily have all of the trust there. How do you bridge that?
And in a word, education. And there could be a lot of hui, a lot of meetings that provide that education. As someone who didn't come from the technology sector, this sector's got so many acronyms and freaking words that half the time I'm like, I suffer from imposter syndrome as the owner of my company. and trying to keep up with, it's another language.
Yeah.
Technology language is like another language. And if you want to learn Chinese or Arabic or whatever, technology is its own language.
Yep.
And so often when we're working with Indigenous groups, whether it's here at home or abroad, the first thing is actually just going back to, have you heard of the word data sovereignty?
Mm-hmm.
And what does that word mean to you? It's like starting right, and sometimes that might be done in a second language.
Right.
And it might be separating sovereignty, which they feel very strongly about. They've got hundreds of years of thought processes around it, and then you add the word data.
Yep.
So you almost got to go right back to basics to say, what's your understanding of said word, said phrase? Here's how we're defining it for this particular kaupapa we talked about today, and then working through what their concerns are. And it can range from just, I don't trust big tech, period.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a whole corridor. Let's work through what that means.
Yep.
Through to other ones that come up is, my understanding is that if the data is not in our country and it's stored in another country, that the laws of that country apply and ours don't. Is that true? And I say, in essence, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
So having in-country data servers ticks a big box straight away.
For sure.
Then again, data sovereignty is a couple of words which mean a lot of different things. Access. How do we get access? Who's getting access to this data? Where is the data coming from?
Yep.
Who's providing the consent and approvals for that? If we agree for our data to be imported to the platform and so forth, who gets to decide where it gets shared? And so we work through in a lot of detail, a lot of meetings to help everybody get understanding and comfort with what do we mean by access? And also then working through, where are the risks and what are the mitigations to those risks? So addressing data sovereignty, which quickly leads into AI, usually those two subjects are attached, is a real education process that you just need to take your time, find out what they know first, don't assume anything. Check that we have similar definitions of a word, which even in English, you can have a different interpretation. Get that common playing field and then just work consecutively through their concerns. The lucky piece for us is that we've run a range of different pilots with different clients, and we're able to share their experiences directly. So don't ask me, let me introduce client X here from this iwi. Let me introduce client X from this Pacifica group. Let me introduce this group from North America. And that really gives people a lot of comfort. So, okay, these guys have tested this out. But yeah, in a nutshell, education and take your time when you're working with Indigenous groups. Do not rush education, because the moment you appear to rush, you're not trustworthy.
Right. Yeah.
You got to go at the cadence.
It'll let them make those decisions themselves, I guess.
Yeah.
This has been an amazing conversation, frankly, and really, really opened my eyes up to a few things. I just kind of recap. We covered everything from kind of how artistic expression is being, expanded and enabled, and how that kind of carries through to culture, and how cultural kind of appreciation and accessibility can be increased. How you're changing the shape of that engagement with culture for young people and for people who might not be able to access their own culture due to accessibility issues or storage issues if it's all sitting in a box of paper in someone's shelf. I'd be really keen to hear from you any kind of closing thoughts or any impression that you have of where all of this is going. I mean, in the limit of things, if we're heading towards some super intelligence future or some really transformative stuff, how is all of this positioning? How is Kiwa Digital positioning, but how are your clients positioning, and how are you helping them make the most out of all of these opportunities and transformation?
I think the real measure of success is what happens to our youth, the next generation. How have we been able to impact positively their abilities to have work, to have confidence in their own culture, in their authenticity, to be themselves. And these are quite, philosophical sort of aspirations, but at the end of the day, that is the true measure. It's not how we have done right now. It's when we're gone, how much better is the next generation? And so for me, while we're working through these big topics, data sovereignty and AI, and these are all very important, is trying to look as much as possible through the lens of those that are coming.
Yeah.
while looking in the rear vision mirror, what are the learnings from our elders? If we go to our beautiful whānau and Aboriginal Torres Strait Island, Dreamtime narratives, tens of thousands of years old. Yeah. These folks have been navigating the earth, so much longer than any of us and got it right. And so what can we learn from the past, from our elders, from the different Indigenous groups? Because guess what? They all tested stuff out in their own ways. They were doing their own research, which was called surviving on the planet.
Yeah.
Making lots of mistakes, people possibly even dying in the process. But they survived. They learned, particularly a lot about nature. And so I think we look into the rear vision mirror as appropriately and respectfully as we can, because you need the mandate of the elders to enable you to go forward with their blessing. It's very important to do that. And then quickly look to the youth, because the youth of today are also the digital natives.
Yeah.
I'm a Gen Xer, not quite boomer. And even though I own a technology company, an international technology company, I can see that my whānau, my daughters, are so far ahead of me in terms of just natural ability,
right? Digital.
And so if we have that sort of front and back rear vision mirror, for Indigenous groups, peoples, that's our primary focus at the moment, is restoring their sovereignty, their confidence, allowing them to be their full selves and in control of their destinies. And data is power. The saying here is, what's good for Māori is good for New Zealand. I would go a step further. What's good for Indigenous is good for the world. So we're going to focus our time and energy on enabling and supporting our Indigenous peoples around the world to allow them to become the best version of themselves, and just watching the fruits of that roll out to the rest of humanity. And if that's the only thing I can do between now and I pass, it's been a good day.
It's an amazing goal. I think it's a beautiful place to leave it. Thank you very much, Steven Renata, for joining us today and helping us deliver next.